studio show, Good Morning Football. I've mentioned, obviously, you played for 13 years. You were playing last season. Do you just enjoy sort of, you mentioned it before, in sort of like, two high safeties, and do you like analyzing that stuff and getting into the techniques and what players should be doing on the field as much as sort of, I mean, this is so much of what we do, Good Morning Football, myself, is driven by sort of also off the field storylines, like what's Tom Brady going to do? What's Aaron Rodgers going to do? All that, DeMar Hamlin, Patrick Mahomes injury, I mean, which isn't X's and O's. Do you like getting into all that other stuff, or you would prefer to just break down the game?
No, I like both of it. And I think as a player, you sit in that locker room and so many narratives are controlled by whoever is hosting the podcast, who's writing the article. And I feel like as a player, we kind of dream of having that platform where you're on a team. You take Lamar Jackson's situation over the last few weeks with his injury, and it's just like everybody's like, well, why isn't he saying anything? And I get an opportunity on a daily show on NFL Network to say, like, hey, one of the main things when you get in the locker room is the head coach always says, hey, I'm the one that talks about injuries. I'm the one who handles it. And then from a player perspective, when you hear everybody talking about your injury, you don't think it's represented well, then you're like, all right, I have to speak up. So for me, I get an opportunity to show that, hey, like I played the game, the X's and O's, I can dive into that. We can do a whole segment where I'm highlighting different guys, showing what they're doing here, how it affects the offense versus what the defense is doing. But then also when we start talking about a storyline, like I can give you exactly what this guy may be thinking on this, or what this guy may be thinking on that. Or maybe I went through a similar situation, or watched a former teammate go through that situation. So I enjoy both parts of it, because especially in our show, we sit at a desk with four people that all come from four different backgrounds. Everybody heavily involved in football, the NFL to college football. But we all got there in different ways. So we're weighing in on whatever the hot topic is. We all may have four totally different perspectives, and we all get a chance to voice that on the show and kind of challenge one another. And the fan gets a chance to get a sneak peek and dive into it as they're sitting at home. And it may be Kyle one day, and they're just like, he's exactly right. He's representing my point when he makes that debate. And 5 minutes later in the show, just like, wow, Jay's right on that. I agree. So I think that's the really cool thing, is you get a different perspective and a different role from each one of us.
I do feel like at some point you'll get sick of like the Rodgers and Brady stuff. Like at some point, like they better make a decision, because, I get where they're coming from. I don't blame them for taking time, but we're going to speculate. I mean, maybe you'll get the inside word from your brother who you played with Tom too. Do you have Tom's number in your phone?
I do. Whether it's still the same number from when I was playing, who knows? I sent him a video of my son catching a ball before, and he responded. I mean, it made my son's day. I was like, Tom's probably busy, but he did. But if I get the inside scoop, I'll be the one to break news. Ian Rappaport will probably be pissed at me if I'm the one.
That would be tremendous. I mean, you'd think, I went through this week. You'd think Tom would break the news on his own radio show one of these days, but who knows how he'll, everyone uses social media now.
Yeah, he's sad. Whatever he does is going to be well thought out. It's not going to be like last year. It's going to be well thought out, and there's going to be touching a lot of different things that goes along with it.
What did you make? I don't know how much of a feel you got for, because I think it was more of a Twitter thing than anything, and I don't know how much you pay attention to it or you're on there. I'm sure you guys talked about in the show, but what do you make of so many people thinking Tom was legitimately pissed at Jim Gray on his Sirius XM show, and Jim asked him about his future, and Tom said, I don't fucking know what I'm doing, and I'll let you know when I fucking, whatever it was. And people were like, oh my, like it's Tom's radio show. It's his co-host. They're having fun. It's not it, but everyone's thinking it's like Tom's pissed. Give me your take on that.
Yeah, I looked at it the same way you did. I'm sure they go into a show and they talk about, hey, we're going to hit on this, we're going to hit on that. And even if Tom didn't know it's his show, he could say, hey, no, forget that. We're not talking about that. We'll scrap that, cut it, whatever the case may be. I think that was his way. I told you, Tom's strategic. That was his way of telling everybody, shut the hell up. Like, I will tell you when I know what I am doing. No different than Aaron Rodgers goes on McAfee's show each and every week, and now all of a sudden he's the Jets' new quarterback because he knew the entire roster. And it's like, no, like he goes on the show, like they're going to talk about things. He's an NFL football player. They played against the Jets. He knows who Garrett Wilson is. He knows who Breece Hall is. He's sitting in those meeting rooms. So I think you got to know who you're listening to. Guys like Aaron Rodgers, like Tom Brady, like they're veterans at this thing. They know exactly what they're saying, why they're saying it, and the impact that it's going to make. But I enjoyed hearing Brady drop some F-bombs. I think that's always a pleasure for the listener.
But he drops F-bombs on that show all the time. This wasn't anything different. I think people just thought maybe the tone but you summed it up. You hit it right on the nail, right on the head. This was Tom's way of saying, like, I know this question was coming. Let me have some fun with it. Everyone leave me alone until I figure out what I'm going to do. I mean, I actually spoke to Jim Gray yesterday to get his reaction to it. And he said that they did not discuss that question, and he didn't tell Tom he was going to ask that question, but he said Tom knows that question's coming. It's the number one question on everyone's mind. So I think Tom totally did exactly what you said there.
And I think for Tom too, there's so many former Patriots that are in the media. My brother was on the pregame show for NFL Network this week, and he talked about Tom going to the Titans. Ninkovich is on ESPN. There's so many guys that have played with Tom Brady that are all in sports media, and the question's always posed. I was like, you were with Tom, you know him well. What do you think he's going to do? And we all have to pull this answer from our ass to come up with something, a reason of what we think he's going to do. That was his way of even telling us. Bill used to go into meetings and say that, hey, I know you guys know this person and that person, but if the media asks you, just shut the hell up. Let them answer for themselves. So I think the same thing Tom was letting us know too, as former teammates, like, you have no idea what I'm doing either, so don't pretend to talk for me.
That's a really good point that I hadn't thought of that you brought up, is that there are so many Patriots in the media. And you mentioned two there. You didn't even mention the two biggies that really have caused headlines were Edelman and Gronk. You know, Gronk went on Fox and said he's not going to retire, and Edelman said he's not going to play for the Bucs, whatever it was. So, yeah, you have all these Patriots in the media talking about Tom. And, you know, I think from what I saw earlier today on his Instagram story, it looks like he's like on vacation somewhere with his kids anyway. So, you know, I don't think anything's coming down. And that's the Rodgers thing is interesting because I said this on Twitter. I'd be curious what your take is. I think Aaron Rodgers would be insane to come to the Jets for two reasons. I mean, one, the Jets for 98% of their existence have been a complete embarrassment. And he's such a high maintenance diva. It would be a bad, and then the flip side of that is he's now become this antagonist with the media and has this whole thing where he's the victim and the media is this and that. And he's going to come to New York, the most savage media in the country. It would be, I would love it for my job because it would give me content every day. But like, that's a bad fit I think. What's your take?
That's been a lot of the conversation. I think if you strictly look at football, you're just, all right, Garrett Wilson's there, Elijah Moore's there, Bam Knight came along, hopefully Breece Hall's able to get healthy. You're like, I can see him doing a lot with his offense, with the weapons they have, and Robert Saleh controlling the defense and everything that they did, how successful they were. But I think outside of that, I mean, Brett Favre left Green Bay. He went to the New York Jets. Like, now is Aaron Rodgers going to leave Green Bay and go to the New York Jets? It's just, I think from a media standpoint, I don't know though. Like, maybe Rodgers would enjoy that. Like, we've seen him. I mean, he does a weekly show with Pat McAfee. He doesn't have to do a weekly show. Maybe he would love to have the eyes and the ears of some of sports media's best of the best every single day, listening to every single word he's given, whether it's about the game plan this upcoming week or philosophy on life as he's sitting there just talking to everybody. And maybe he'd go home and go on Twitter or go on different websites and just read at all the stuff that everybody's talking about just because he might have said 5 words about a certain topic. I don't know. It would be, to your point, for the sake of doing a show every day, as if we don't talk enough Rodgers, I would thoroughly enjoy him being in our backyard and being right there with the New York Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it because the first time something bad happens and he blames the media's going to eat him up. And this is in Green Bay where, you know, there's like the Washington Gazette and that's it. And, you know. Let me ask you a couple of questions, sort of playoff related here. I want to get your perspective as someone who was in the league for 13 years and just got off the field. Give me and my listeners a little some thoughts on what you think Mahomes will go through. Will he be 100% with the high ankle sprain as a quarterback? How much it will affect him? I mean, to me, that's the number one story as we head into Sunday. is
Yeah.
Mahomes' ankle and how much he's affected by that. Tell me, as a player, what we should expect and what do you think about that?
Yeah, I can't imagine him being 100%. A high ankle sprain you typically see as a month injury. At least 4 weeks, guys are out with that injury. And we saw how hard it was for him. Mahomes is a tough dude. And he gets hurt, and right away, he's like, I'm good. I'm good. And then we're watching him jump on one leg to hand the ball off. So I do think it's going to have a huge impact. I mean, even when he came back in the second half against Jacksonville, he didn't make a throw outside the pocket in the second half. I do think, though, the thing with Mahomes, he's just that good that he can sit in the pocket and still be able to beat you. I'm fascinated by this game. I went back and watched the film of the Bengals game against the Buffalo Bills. I went back to the Bengals game versus Pat Mahomes earlier this year. Because with the Bengals and Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator, what they've been able to do and stop some of these high-powered offenses, some of the best quarterbacks in the league is fascinating to me. And then you couple it with what you just said, Mahomes' injury, is how do they attack that? Watching that first game, they blitzed some, but a lot of it was playing coverage. And when they did blitz, Mahomes was getting the ball out quick or fading back and being able to throw up a deep shot. Now with the ankle, do they get a feel for him early on in the game and then say, you know what, he's not mobile. Let's send the house at him and get up and see if he can hold the ball long enough or fade back on that ankle and be able to make some of the throws that he can make. So this one is going to be a lot of fun. To me, there's no way he's 100%. I don't envision him being able to have a full week of practice this week, which I don't think he needs. If he can get out there a little bit on Friday, I think that would even be enough. That if I'm a Kansas City Chief fan, I'm totally comfortable. He's Patrick Mahomes. He's proven year after year since he's been in there what he can do.
Yeah. And sticking with Chiefs Bengals, if you were on the Bengals right now, would you tell Eli Apple to like cut back on the trash talking, or you got to let him be who he is?
I love Eli Apple. You associated Peter Schrager. He said that this morning. I mean, you have Pat Beverly in the NBA, who's kind of that antagonist that gets under the skin of people, that's going to do all the trash talking. And they don't have to be the best player on the court or on the field. And Eli Apple's not claiming to be the best corner in the NFL. But the one thing we can say about Eli Apple is he's been able to somewhat back up his trash talk that he's given. He was in the Super Bowl last year. He went against Mahomes and Tyreek Hill.
Getting torched by Cooper Kupp, but by the way. But
he didn't have a good game against Cooper Kupp, for sure. But the guys he was talking all that trash to, being up to, you watch him this past weekend against Buffalo. Eli had a good game in that game. And as a secondary and as a unit, they played really well against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And I think Eli, he adds something to it. Those guys on the team, you can talk to them. I know their DB coach. I was with him in Miami. He was just like, yeah, Eli is a crazy dude. Like, we love having him. And I think that's the perception. As even last year, as he was talking trash, whether it was Jesse Bates, whether it was Von Bell, it's just like, when Eli talks, like, he knows we have his back. So those guys may not be saying it, but they kind of expect that from Eli, puffing the cigar in the locker room after winning the divisional round, knowing that they're heading, then he was calling it Burrow's Head Stadium after the game.
The problem he has is that, I mean, from what I've seen on Twitter the last 2 days, you don't see players going after current players going after current players that much. And current players are going after him. And what they're going after him about is like, you're doing all this trash talking. You're not that good. If Travis Kelce should or Mahomes is trash talking, it's one thing. Eli Apple, people are like, who the hell? You mentioned the Pat Beverly. I mean, that was such a great tweet by Sauce Gardner.
But that's what makes it. That's what makes it so much fun. That it's coming from
That's true. That's
Eli
true.
Apple, and it's like everybody Eli. So it's like now he's built up his reputation where you're not even playing in the game, and somebody sees him talking about Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, and now you have randomly a Justin Herbert who gets pissed off and Keenan Allen, and they want to jump in. I think that's what makes it so much fun. And as just strictly now as a fan of the game, you look forward to this Sunday watching the interaction between an Eli Apple and a guy on their side, maybe whether it's Juju, whether it's MVS, whether he gets in Kelsey's face. You look forward to that and his trash talk and all of his antics.